So I'm doing a video here that's going to try and tackle a couple issues at once. Well, not really issues. I wanted to do a review of what I consider the pros and cons of following Joel Wallach's dietary recommendations are. And I'm going to be honest, I don't really find much problem in the stuff that he's stating in lectures. And I'm going to get to that in a second. And I also want to do what I'm going to be doing in this video is the importance of a ketogenic diet and, or not a ketogenic diet, a lower carbohydrate vegan diet. The reason I said keto diet is I wanted to give a shout out to a channel called Heavenly Fan, and I'm going to leave a link in the description. She's a British, I think she's Japanese or Taiwanese. She's something Asian, okay? And she does ketogenic recipes that are 100% plant-based. The reason I'm also leaving links to ketogenic recipes and things of that nature that are vegan is because incorporating, quote, ketogenic dietary recipes into the diet helps to lower the total carbohydrates. Now, first I want to get into the Joel Wallach thing, and I'm going to leave links to his Dead Doctors Don't Lie podcast. I highly recommend people listen to it, but I also highly recommend people watch his lectures. His lectures are where it's at. I haven't had a chance to purchase any of his books and read his books, though I know I'll be very pleasantly surprised with what I read. Probably not surprised, but pleasantly, I'll just find it. I'll be in agreement with the things that he writes. I'm pretty sure of that. Because essentially what it seems like he promotes is almost an Okinawan-style diet that is supplemented with vitamins and minerals. Now, that being said, some of the things I've heard on his radio program and even in some of the lectures is he is not against butter, he's not against animal fat, he's not against a lot of the things we know to be bad for people. Now, that being said, Joel Wallach is probably one of the most knowledgeable, popular authors on this through pathological research, actually doing autopsies on dead animals and dead humans and things of that nature, as opposed to, say, a McDougall or even a Dr. Atkins or things of that nature. So I will say that he is probably the most knowledgeable on this. What worries me is he is connected to a company called Longevity that seems to be, I think it's made in Nicaragua, but it's a supplement company, and I looked at some of the nutrient values of some of the supplements promoted, and one of them was like coenzyme Q10. There's 3 milligrams of coenzyme Q10 in one of the products, which is not very much at all. And this is one of my problems when I buy amino acids or when I buy supplements, except for my regular multivitamin, I never buy pre-compounded supplements. And the reason why is a lot of times, with the exception of, say, branched-chain amino acids, there is very rarely enough of any one particular ingredient to get a therapeutic effect from it. For example, every day I take 400 milligrams of coenzyme Q10, which is what a cardiologist would recommend for heart issues. Now, I want to get this off. I'm not a doctor. Don't take what I'm saying as medical advice. It's not medical advice. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not a dietitian. I'm not a nurse practitioner. I'm not anything of like that. So what I'm saying, this video is for completely entertainment purposes. Now, getting into the ketogenic diet, a lot of people, especially back when I was on Facebook, I was in a lot of keto groups and low-carb groups, and a lot of people doubted when I was vegan and low-carb that you can do a low-carb vegan diet. What they're not understanding is the bulk of a vegan diet is, generally speaking, if it's a whole food vegan diet, generally speaking, it is vegetables. And vegetables tend to be lower in carbohydrates than grains unless they're starchy vegetables. So I wrote down a quick, this is not a complete list. I'll leave links to a more complete list in the description. But of course, I would recommend people buy something like the top 100 Foods to Eat in the Zone by Dr. Barry Sears, and purchase Dr. Atkins' New Diet Revolution, the book, so that you can actually see what you really can eat on a low-carb diet. It's pretty amazing. Okay, so the plant-based foods, that is. So some of the vegetables are spinach, of course, lettuces, cabbages meaning kale, Brussels sprouts, what have you, cucumbers, zucchini, eggplants, peppers, tomatoes, broccoli, pumpkin, Brussels sprouts, green beans, mushrooms, carrots, onions, leeks, shallots, radish and daikon, parsnips. And some of the fruits you can have, of course, avocados have not very much carbohydrates at all that aren't fiber. Most berries, they recommend taking out blueberries because blueberries are higher in carbohydrate. I would recommend simply not overeating blueberries because remember, it's the glycemic load that you're consuming in a day. And again, I don't recommend a keto diet, so because you can add more of these foods. So also lemons, peaches, plums, oranges, cherries. These are a multitude of different fruits and vegetables you can eat on a keto diet. Now I've recently completely got rid of fruits, and I use the powdered pomegranate peel, powdered orange peel, powdered lemon peel. I put these things, powdered spinach, powdered kale. I put these things into drinks because it's just easier to help me get more of it in my diet that way. And it's funny because you see these advertisements for things like Patriot Power Greens and all this stuff. You can actually buy the individual ingredients for these things and leave out like the barley grass and the wheatgrass juice and the stuff like that because you don't really need that. But the things like the cruciferous vegetables like kale powder and also spinach, which is a great source of potassium, you can buy this in powdered form. And the thing is, with the Wallach, what I was getting into with Wallach is what worries me is when people start selling products, the message tends to get a little off track. That's what I think damaged Atkins' reputation so much, was the Atkins products. And if you even look in the Great Nutrition Debate, which is a long video, I might leave a link to the whole thing, but so far I'm only planning on leaving what Dr. Atkins had to say in it. But if you look at what harmed Atkins' credibility, it was his marketing of products that were highly refined foods. I mean, they're not terrible for you, but they are refined, so people could poke fun at that and say, Atkins is selling you all this stuff. Now, to be fair, all you need to do the Atkins diet is basically the Atkins New Diet Revolution and the willpower to stick to a diet. I mean, that's really all that you have. One of the things that Wallach said in one of his lectures, which I thought was interesting and not accurate though, was that I must have the best mineral composition of any human on earth, because one of the things he said is it's impossible to stay away from sweets if you are deficient in certain trace minerals, which may or may not be true. But the fact of the matter is, I do know that a high-protein diet kills appetite. Okay? It does not allow you to be hungry. You have to remind yourself to eat on a high-protein diet. And that's the thing. The problem I see with a ketogenic diet, too, is I don't think it's that necessary to reduce carbohydrates to such a steep level to get a weight loss result, especially if you're amping up the protein, especially plant protein. And it's very important that you stick to a plant-based diet because it removes the health concerns caused by protein from non-plant sources. And that's a big thing that people do not understand. When you're looking at the problems caused by a high-protein diet, it's high animal protein. And it has to do with the amino acid composition and the high methionine. And we know this because of methionine restriction and how methionine restriction helps to prevent disease. But the thing that you need to understand is you do need some methionine because it is an essential amino acid. But you can get that through things like soy, and you can get that through things like seitan, and you can get that through other sources. And like I've said in past videos, I don't even know if methionine restriction is the best bet because glycine supplementation, glycine is a very cheap amino acid. Glycine supplementation mimics methionine restriction and extends life in laboratory animals. So that's my thing there. But I do believe that overall limiting or eliminating of animal protein is probably a good thing. And that's the problem, is when people start, and it's the psychology behind doing the bad thing, and people like to hear that what they're doing, when they're doing the wrong thing, they like to hear that that's good. And that was the basis of how Atkins became so marketable, is because everybody was tired of hearing that fat and cholesterol were bad for you. And when he came out with a diet that says you can eat all the meat you want, all the bacon you want, and you'll lose weight, and it's very true. People liked hearing that eating foods that they knew were bad for them were good for them. And what isn't told is that the Atkins diet can be done in a very healthful manner with monounsaturated fat, and you can get rid of the dangerous polyunsaturated fats, the dangerous saturated fats, and the dangerous cholesterol. You can get that out of the diet, and you can stick to a high monounsaturated fat diet, supplement it with essential fats like plant-based omega-3s, and some of the omega-6s that you'll get from the oils that you're taking in, and the pumpkin seeds and nuts and sunflower seeds, what have you. Nobody wants to hear that, because that's not bad. And the other danger is this is what also cracks me up going in the other direction. Diet sodas. Just today a friend of mine brought up that somebody told them that drinking diet soda shortens telomere length. It does not. That's not what the study said, because I went back and I read the study that they were saying said that, and it does not say that. It said that sugared sweetened sodas shrink telomeres. So this will tie into Atkins like this. I'm sorry I didn't prepare this better, but the thing is, what got me starting to question Atkins, again, the Atkins products, okay? Then you have the, in his new diet revolution, unlike the Atkins diet revolution from way back when, or even from the Atkins age-defying diet, which I think is his best book, along with Dr. Atkins' Vitanutrient Solution. But Dr. Atkins started getting away from artificial sweeteners. And the reason that bothered me was, and he started promoting things like stevia and sucralose. Now, sucralose, which is an artificial sweetener, I'm fine with sucralose. My problem with stevia is it is a hormonal disruptor. But more importantly, what you need to understand, having been overweight, and also working with overweight people to lose weight, running a weight management group, one of the biggest problems with fat people is getting them to eat differently. So telling somebody, and a lot of these morbidly obese people, drink their calories in the form of soda and juices and things like that. So when you can tell people that they can switch out orange juice for Crystal Light, or they can switch out grape juice for Crystal Light, or they can switch out Coca-Cola for Diet Coca-Cola, Diet caffeine-free Coca-Cola, and I'll get into the caffeine thing. You got to avoid the caffeine. And even the phosphoric acid's an issue to a bit, but not as much as the caffeine and the sugar when people are drinking 20 sodas plus a day. So the thing is, it's very hard to get people to switch to a dietary lifestyle that promotes weight loss, because people like to hear that what they're doing that's bad is good. So Atkins is saying artificial sweeteners might pose problems, even though we know they don't. Okay, I did a video about that in defense of aspartame, and I'm going to expand on that when I do another video in defense of diet soda, which I'm planning on calling in defense of boomer crack, because everybody likes to call Diet Coke boomer crack now. So we know that diet soda is not a problem. It's a speculated problem, but we now know through research that diet soda is not a problem to one's health, despite all this craziness, unless you have certain rare genetic conditions that affect your ability to process certain amino acids, in which case you'd be avoiding amino acids from things like pork and milk and things like that anyway, and soy and all that. Diet soda is more or less not going to hurt you, and we already know that. And again, I'm reminding everybody, I'm not a doctor, but look it up for yourselves. The point is when somebody like Dr. Atkins, despite the fact that the Atkins diet is a carbohydrate-controlled diet, and I know this because I've worked with fat people in fat groups, when somebody like Dr. Atkins says, when he says, NutraSweet might pose a problem, what they hear is, okay, well then I'm not going to drink diet soda, I'm going to drink regular soda. There is something wrong with a fat person's brain. They're literally addicted to a negative lifestyle of food, of eating food that is bad for them. Okay, that's the truth. And one of the things I liked, I think it was in his original book, The Atkins Diet Revolution, from I believe it was the 70s, he points out to alcoholics, alcoholics that claim, I'm not an alcoholic, I can stop drinking anytime I want, but I can't stop drinking long enough to stick to the Atkins diet. He says in his book, maybe you need to admit you have a drinking problem if you can't, resist drinking long enough to lose 20 or 30 pounds, And that's a big problem, is because I think that, and I don't want to say food addiction is the same as alcohol addiction or drug addiction or things like that, because it's not. I think that food addiction, the similarity between food addiction and alcoholism or heroin addiction or nicotine addiction or any of these are the excuses people make to justify gorging themselves on these foods. And that's one of the problems. Now, in the same sense, I do think that switching to a zero-calorie, and I know that switching to a zero-calorie or low-calorie beverage, such as Crystal Light, or Diet Pepsi, or Diet Coca-Cola, or Diet Root Beer, like Diet A&W, Diet 7-Up, Diet Sprite, or Sprite Zero, or Zero Sugar, or whatever they're calling it now. I know for a fact that you will lose weight so long as you are not consuming a surplus of calories, okay? And also, if you are consuming ample amounts of protein, preferably from plant sources, it increases thermogenesis, and it will help you to lose weight more quickly than simply cutting calories alone. Now, how does a low carbohydrate diet work? Now, people that don't understand human physiology or diet physiology at all don't grasp this. How the human body works with the energy reserves, okay? You need energy balance, and this is why I recommend limiting fruit consumption when you're trying to lose weight, and what I had to do. And the reason why is you burn glucose and carbohydrate first. So you burn simple sugars and carbohydrates in general first, then you start burning the reserve fuel, which is fat. When you run out of fat, you start burning protein. And this is also what is called autophagy. Everybody talks about autophagy. When you run out of fuel sources like carbohydrate and fat, then you start looking for other tissues like muscle tissue and organ tissue that's been damaged to break down and recycle. I'm not going to get into autophagy. I might do a whole video on autophagy. I'm not a big fan of that. I think there's a lot more to that than meets the eye, and I think people are going to find that out. But the thing is, that's one of the things when you start, like this is where fasting and things like that come in, but I'm not getting into that. With a ketogenic diet, the way a ketogenic diet or a low carbohydrate diet work is they're using up your energy stores so that your body starts burning its fat tissue, its adipose tissue for energy. You don't need to go ketogenic to do this. You just need to simply reduce carbohydrates to a reasonable amount. For people that have trouble doing this, that's where something like the Atkins diet comes in. But I do think that there are potential, there's safety issues with ketogenic diets because people sometimes go too far with them because it's too easy to say if a little's good, a lot's better. And you start seeing I would call it still anorexia. It's not quite orthorexia, but orthorexia, I'm not a big believer in. I mean, I do believe that there are people that are mentally deranged, but I wouldn't consider them true orthorexics because they're not eating right, like carnivore. I believe a lot of people on the carnivore diet would be what would be considered an orthorexic because they believe that, eating carbohydrate is impure and things like that, or eating plant foods is impure and poisonous and blah, blah, blah. So I think that meets the concept of orthorexia, but in my opinion, orthorexia should mean proper, meaning proper nutrition. But with a ketogenic diet, I think some people can take it too far, and for too long they stay in ketosis. But as Atkins points out in his book, I mean, an overweight person, even a little bit overweight person, as long as they're overweight, they can stay in ketosis for forever. I mean, as long as they're not underweight. It's when you get underweight that you start seeing the negative side effects. And Atkins admitted that. And that's what's important to understand. It's a lot of these modern keto people don't fully grasp that. I do highly recommend people follow the links in the description, which will help them to understand how to diet in a low carbohydrate manner. There's some things in there about diet soda. And there's also Heavenly Fans channel. Check her channel out. Now, to be honest, when I eat pretty basically. I don't make anything fancy, but if you're into fancy food, check out her channel. There's also other links to other vegan keto recipes, and also the links to the fruits and vegetables you can eat on keto, on vegan keto. And there's also a link, there's definitely a link to Dr. Atkins's aspect of the Great Nutrition Debate, which I highly recommend people watch that, because that will help you understand how a ketogenic diet works, why it works, and basically that's it. And that can correlate to a low carbohydrate diet. And that's all for this video.